I just want to start by saying, if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed. There just isn't one. In the spring of 2005, I was an intern for Nickelodeon Studios. I had a degree in animation, but it wasn't paid as much, exactly how most internships aren't anyway. However, it had benefits and seemed like a bigger deal for kids then. Most may have considered me cool for my job. With my job, I worked straight with the editors and animators and got to watch the new episodes earlier before their release. The SpongeBob movie had been created the year before, and there was a block with the creativity of the staff team, hence why it took them longer to produce Season 4. That wasn't always the case since there was another upsetting reason for the delay. Something was wrong with the season premiere that had pushed everything back for several months. We would always watch these newer episodes in a viewing room within Nickelodeon Studios that only certain people were allowed to access. Inside the editor's room were a few other interns and me, the lead animators and sound editors for the final cut. We had received a stack of episodes for watching and analyzing to see if they could make it on TV. The first copy we were supposed to watch was Fear of a Krabby Patty, which was the 4th season's first episode. Since the episodes we viewed were in final, animators often put up a placeholder title card to joke around. Such titles had How Sex Doesn't Work instead of Rockabye by Valve, when SpongeBob and Patrick adopted a sea scallop. They weren't notably funny, but occasionally got a few chuckles out of us. We were prepared to watch the episode, and then the title card, Red Mist, appeared, which was unexpected, but we shrugged it off as just another joke. The title card was in all red. One of the interns beside me chuckled and asked, "What's this now?" The music was sad, as if we were about to watch an upsetting episode. Typically, the beginning credits of the producers of the episodes would be seen, but there was nothing. It was empty. I thought it was weird for the names not to pop up as we usually would see them. The normal bubble splash transition plays, and the story begins with Squidward playing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear knocking on Squidward's door, and Squidward stops to answer it. The Scottish fish is outside asking Squidward if he's interested in something, and gets interrupted by Squidward as he closes his door. Squidward heads back in, only for the knocking to return. Squidward opens his door, and something unusual happens. The Scottish fish is staring at the camera. His eyes were purely black and looked as if they were bleeding. He says to Squidward, "Please save us from the red mist. The red mist is coming." The Scottish fish disappears. Squidward goes back to practicing his clarinet. We hear SpongeBob and Patrick laughing outside, and Squidward stops, yelling at them both to keep it down as he is practicing for a concert he has that night. SpongeBob and Patrick stop. They look at Squidward in sadness. Then, out of nowhere, a distorted and weirdly drawn version of SpongeBob and Patrick pops up on the screen. Right here's where I thought something seemed off. One piece of the music kept repeating, over and over. I looked at one of my coworkers in confusion. They were confused as well. The bubble splash screen appears, and everybody goes inside to see Squidward's recital. Squidward looks at the crowd behind the curtains, visibly afraid. Squidward gets introduced on stage as he thanks everyone for coming. The crowd is silent, and you can hear a faint cough in the background. Squidward begins playing his clarinet as the crowd starts to boo him. Not the usual cartoon booing you'd hear in the show, but there's malice to it. Squidward is watching the audience leave. The background goes black, and Squidward is almost about to cry. The shot goes black, and we hear somber music again. Squidward can be seen walking alone at night in sadness. He goes home and heads to bed, and then the shot cuts out. A few seconds later, we then see a red sky with Squidward's house, SpongeBob's pineapple house, and Patrick's rock as silhouettes. You can audibly hear the sound of wind in the background. Squidward can be seen fully awake in his bed. He then looks outside his window as a red light shines. The intern next to me asks, "Is this real?" I didn't have a response because I was asking the same question too. Squidward walks towards the camera and then looks at it smiling. A frame suddenly flashes on our screen and then back to Squidward. It made some of us jump. However, when it goes back to Squidward, his face seems like he's holding in tears while smiling. His face just seems somewhat distorted, which creeped me out. Another frame flashes again, except we see something dreadful. The lead animator pauses and rewinds to the frame, and we couldn't believe what we saw. It was a still frame of a dead child. His face was freakishly deformed and bloodied with an eye dangling out. I was mortified. Before the lead animator continued playing, one of the interns quickly got up from his seat and shouted, "Is this a joke?" We all looked at him. We were wondering the same thing too. This had to be a sick joke. I told him to calm down and take a seat. "What is this?" he asked me. I wish I had a proper answer, but all I could say was, "I don't know." The female intern next to me asks him to sit down. Her face was full of disrelish. I could even tell she wanted to stop watching this too. We all knew something was wrong at this point, but we just kept watching. The lead animator plays the episode again. We see Squidward covering his head as the background becomes distorted and turns into a dark room. Squidward looks at the camera again, with his eyes glowing red, and they seem realistic. They were bleeding, pulsating from his eyes. It was something I've never seen before in a cartoon, especially one like SpongeBob. The wind was slowly starting to get louder and distorted. Squidward looks at a giant dark doorway for a few seconds, and then a strange, distorted version of Squidward pops up from the doorway for a second. It makes most of us jump because of the loud, high-pitched screeching noise that came with the deformed figure. It terrifies Squidward and makes him cower in fear. This deformed creature kept getting closer to Squidward, and we could see his distorted features, but we couldn't make it out due to how badly drawn it was. And then, another frame flashes. The lead animator was reluctant to go back. We all were, but he knew he had to go back, and so he did. The animator went back, and it was another picture of a boy. This photo was much different than the last. The top half of the boy's head was severed. He was unrecognizable. Blood was pouring out on the floor and down to his shirt from his face. I was terrified. One of the interns behind me was about to vomit. The man beside me got up and said, "I'm done. I'm not watching this anymore." I wanted to leave as well, but I knew I had a job to do. He seemed visibly angry and couldn't take it anymore. He looked around at us in disgust and anger. He then shouts, "Who in their right mind would make something like this? If this was your idea of a prank, this isn't funny anymore." He storms out of the room. I looked at the female intern next to me in disbelief. We didn't know what was going on. I couldn't say anything to her, nor could she say anything to me. We were both horrified by the image. Before the lead animator could keep playing it, the lead sound editor screamed, "No!" as loud as possible. We all looked at him. He had the face of a man who had just seen a ghost. He grabs the phone to call Mr. Hillenberg. He tells the animator, "Don't play it again!" It took Mr. Hillenberg 15 minutes to arrive at the room. He was confused as to why he was called over. The lead animator tells him, "Are you aware of this?" Mr. Hillenberg says no. Nobody told him of the episode being created at all. The lead animator said, "You need to watch this." Mr. Hillenberg takes a seat beside us. I didn't want to finish this, nor did I want him to watch it, but we had to continue. The lead animator continues the episode as usual. The shot fades from the distorted creature back to Squidward's room. Squidward looked terrified, and sweat came dripping down from his head. He looks to his right. The shot cuts to Squidward's drawer, and we see a shotgun on the bottom right of the frame. Mr. Hillenberg's attention was only on the screen, but he didn't like what he saw. The shot fades to black, but the shotgun can be seen glowing, and then the screen cuts to black for a few seconds completely. Out of nowhere, a loud noise comes from the speakers and scares the life out of Mr. Hillenberg. There, we see the third photo of another dead child. This time, the child was utterly unrecognizable. At this point, I almost lost it. I became nauseous and almost threw up. Mr. Hillenberg was tremendously disturbed. And then, we hear the cocking noise of a shotgun, and the screen turns completely red as the noise of the shotgun's trigger gets pulled. The sound of wind sounded highly distorted, and slowly, the shot fades to Squidward's corpse, drawn in disturbing detail. The shotgun desecrated his face off, and blood was all over the wall and floor. His eyes dangled out of his disfigured face as blood rushed down his shirt, arms, and legs. Mr. Hillenberg lets out a disturbed, "Oh my God!" as he keeps watching. The sound of the distorted wind gets louder as the shot fades. The screen then turns black. We hear SpongeBob slowly calling out Squidward's name. For a slight second, Squidward's deformed face fades into the frame, and the shot then goes to Squidward's misshapen head against the fire in the background, indicating Squidward went to hell after death for a few seconds. We can hear an ambulance faintly in the background, and the shot goes to SpongeBob looking at the sunset. Patrick approaches him and greets him. They both have a meaningful conversation about Squidward's suicide. SpongeBob's face keeps getting deformed and goes back to normal with each line he says. The shot pans to Patrick and SpongeBob staring into the sunset together. The episode fades to black, ending with the melancholy positive ending. Then, slowly, 3 distorted figures fade onto the screen. The 3 figures may represent the dead children we've seen throughout the episode. And then it ends, just like that. Mr. Hillenberg was mad. He was furious and he demanded an answer. He told the lead animator to play the episode again so that he could watch it for himself. Most people in the room had already left, but the few other interns that remained and I stayed to watch again. Watching the episode again only imprinted the entirety of it into my mind and caused me horrible nightmares. I'm so sorry I stayed. I should have left. When we watched the episode again, Mr. Hillenberg got angrier, and he stormed out of the room. An investigation was underway about who was responsible for the episode's animation. Nobody came forward. All the animators at the time had only worked on Fear of a Krabby Patty and a few other episodes early that year. The voice actors, especially Tom Kenny and Roger Bumpus, were confused when asked about the episode. They say they don't remember ever working on the Red Mist episode, nor were they told about it. The CTO was called in to analyze the episode and when it happened. The analysis of the file did show that the footage I saw was edited over the new material. All of the equipment was evaluated for foreign software and hardware, including glitches and errors. Everything was fine, which meant this was intentionally made by someone, potentially to sabotage the file. An investigation was launched over the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. No single child was identified, and no clues were gathered from the data. Nothing came about. The mystery behind the dead children had been left unsolved. We didn't know if those photos were even real. I felt terrible over the next few weeks. The memory of the episode had never left my mind. It had to be the most depressing piece of work I've ever come across in my life. We don't know what happened to the episode after. Some say it was destroyed. Others say it was kept locked in a vault somewhere, never to be opened again. But we had never seen the episode again. As of this day, nobody knows who created the episode or where it originated from. Even after Mr. Hillenberg's death, this remains a mystery. This is a mystery that will never have a proper conclusion. The episode was referenced years later on another episode called SpongeBob in Random Land, probably as a way to poke fun at the disturbing episode. I hope that episode never sees the light of day again, and nobody ever views it.